in growing or over this 12-year journey while you're here so far, what do you think at the business level or at the leadership level for you was the most challenging time? Or two questions. What was the most challenging thing that had to be done? And then what was the most challenging, I guess, market cycle that you experienced?
Oh, well, I've been sort of out, in the professional capacity for almost 40 years. So I would say, as a general rule, my 12 years at Benefit Street Partners, I wouldn't put anything in that super challenging category.
Even growing the business, like expansion.
It's been a labor of love, and I think people that work here really, like to be part of a winning team and want to be growing. And a lot of it's just come in a really good organic way. Our acquisitions have been embraced. I think we've done things that had, where people came along with the deals, where there were similar cultures and a lot of that. Maybe the most challenging, and I don't think it was, in retrospect, I really don't think it was very challenging, but the most disruptive was our sale. We didn't mention it, but our firm was sold to Franklin Templeton. That's about 6 years ago now. And that's a pretty big deal.
Can we talk about that for a second? I had that on my list I wanted to chat through. So what was the origin of that? They've obviously we're in their building right now. We fortunately had Tony on from Franklin. We've had some folks from Clarion as well. So they've been on this alternative acquisition spree in a way. How did that come about with you guys at that time?
So it's a really organically good story.
Okay.
We were partnered with Providence. It was sort of like think of it as a partnership. We own roughly half of the business. But they have a private equity mentality. They always look for an exit, right?
Yeah.
And we knew they kind of were thinking about that, and Benefit Street Partners probably had grown way either equal to or well above their expectations. So they had a good monetization on their minds. Also, we had kind of outgrown them. We were... at the time we sold 6 years ago, I think we were bigger than Providence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And what do you want your owner to have? You want them to have distribution capabilities, capital, and access to things you can't access yourself. So we thought about a partner. We didn't want to put ourselves up for an auction or the most important part was not the proceeds. Because a lot of the proceeds were going to somebody else anyway. The most important part was fit and ability to leverage that fit and grow beyond that. And we had a couple of bilateral conversations, but then ended up getting introduced to Providence through a board member who Tom and I were very close with from Deutsche Bank, who was on their board.
Got introduced to Franklin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
He was on the board and said, hey, you ought to meet with the Johnsons. This could be a really good fit. And we flew, long story short, after a trip or two to California and talking about things, what they said was what they wanted a presence in alternative credit. And if they knew how to do that themselves, they would have done it. In other words, we're not going to tell you how to do your job.
Yeah.
You run your business. Because we didn't want to lose the entrepreneurial spirit of being a 200 and something person firm and, having all that. But what they were able to bring to the table is capital, distribution, and especially in retail, where we didn't have any distribution capabilities.
Oh, wow.
And access, and information and access, which they've been so generous with providing to us. And it's been a home run. I know you hear all these war stories about acquisitions and all the things you couldn't anticipate or whatever, but, literally no surprises. I think if you ask most of the people that worked for Benefit Street, 3 months after the acquisition or a year or 3 years after the acquisition, they would say, yeah, nothing in my life changed.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a new health plan. Oh, I have to fill out a new form for that and whatever. Yeah, but otherwise, day to day, it's Benefit Street Partners with a giant assist on any heavy lifts, from Franklin.